If I look at other methods, I was first wanted to use some of these other methods to work with my clients in Asia, but unfortunately none of these methods really satisfied me. There were always something which from my perception was wrong, or was missing. Yeah? So what are common shortcomings of other methods that are used and that are prominent to profile people based on their cognition? Yeah? So let's have a look at these factors that are listed here. Many of these methods have a varying or sometimes also a limited number of construct variables. So what are construct variables or construct dimensions? For example, the Myers-Briggs concept has 4 dimensions, which are extraversion versus introversion, intuition versus sensing, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. So and these are basically 4 dimensions. Other concepts like curtain adapter innovator theory have just 1 dimension, yeah, that you can discern. Something like Clifton's or Gallup's strengths finder has actually no dimension, yeah, which you can really clearly distinguish. Many of these constructs have a binary design. What does this mean? They look at the world in a 0-1 black and white mode. Yeah? So you're either classified as an extrovert or as an introvert. But are there people who are both extroverts and introverts? The answer is yes. Yeah. Now, some proponents of Myers-Briggs, which uses this dimension, may say, yeah, but we tell people that basically they are somewhere in the middle. That's correct. But in the way you assign the profile, they ultimately end up either as an extrovert or an introvert. Full stop. Good. So again, a binary world view, yeah, and many of these concepts have the binary world view. Next one goes back to the profiling questions. Yeah? What is the right amount of profiling questions? Some concepts have, from my point of view, too few questions, like Alan Black. He prides himself with using only 9 questions, which is really an achievement in itself. So he saves people's time, which is really valuable. The interesting thing is, according to people with whom I tested the mind concept, they don't like it. Yeah? Or they would appreciate more questions because they say, with 9 questions, you cannot, it does a really good job. At the same time, I'm more complex a person than you can profile me in 9 questions. Yeah? Yeah? And that's something which is interesting, yeah, which I got as comments from people. Yeah? So they overall were quite happy with their results, but they also said it has limitations. And then they said, yeah, 9 questions. They do a good job with 9 questions, but maybe it's better to have more. Yeah? So HBDI, Herman's Brain Dominance Instrument, uses 120 questions. Yeah? Also Myers-Briggs, depending on the concepts or the test type that you purchase, you also have, I think, 90 or even over 100 questions. So what is the optimal number of questions? That's a good question to ask. Yeah? And for me, the optimal number is that it is as much as is necessary to arrive at a valid result. At the same time, as few as possible to not waste people's time. Yeah? And after we experimented, we arrived at a number that is in between these 9 and 120, and I'll tell you the number later on. Yeah? So the next thing that you could say is a shortcoming of many methods is that they have too few or too many profiles. Yeah? Somehow, Curtin's adapter innovator profile has 2 profiles, which is the adapter or the innovator. Myers-Briggs has 16 profile types. Yeah? ENTP, ISTJ, ESTP, and so on. Yeah? So 16, is this a handy number to manage? It's quite a lot. Yeah? 2 is probably too limited. Some methods also have actually no profile type. Yeah? For example, Strengths Finder, they just give you 5 strengths, but they don't say, with these 5 strengths, you are this particular type. And if they would do so, they would probably end up with thousands of different combinations because they have ultimately 32 different strengths, and you would have then probably 30. Yeah, if you calculate it, it's a very high number, yeah, which you would need to have. Good. Next one are descriptive profile labels. Yeah? So many concepts also don't give you a descriptive profile label. Yeah? Myers-Briggs, in their original form, you end up as an ESTP, for example, and then later on Kiersey added the label doer, the doer about them, or ISTJ is the inspector. Yeah? But some of them don't have a label. Also, in the mind concept from Alan Black, you just get a letter combination, but you don't know how to call these people with a clear name that is in plain English. Everybody understands what this really means. Last but not least, all of these concepts, with one exception, which is the concept from Hamilton, yeah, neglect the dynamic nature of business, yeah, so that business is cyclical, that things are somehow revolving in business cycles, yeah, and that also different people come to the fore at different points in time within a business cycle, yeah, and that's something which is really interesting, and again, that's something which Hamilton and I probably consider, because we're both entrepreneurs and we know this about these cycles, but most of the people who are doing these other concepts are psychologists or have a psychological background, or have maybe also been have a background in creativity, but also from a psychological direction point of view. Yeah? So like Alan Black.